The smell of cheap fabric and dust had followed me since I was a child. On that December morning, as I ironed another shirt I'd sewn in the early hours, I looked out the window of our small house and saw my mother, Mrs. Clara, returning from the market with that tired expression I knew so well. Her slow steps on the dirt road revealed the weight of years working as a laundress to support our two-person family. I was Kayla, 22 years old, and my biggest dream was to get my mother out of that life of sacrifice. Our small town in the Midwest seemed forgotten by time. Simple brick houses were scattered along unpaved streets, where children played barefoot and adults chatted on front porches at the end of the day. I had learned to sew from Mrs. Hernandez, the neighbor who had an old sewing machine, and little by little, I built up a small clientele. I embroidered initials on towels, altered party dresses, and mended torn clothes. The money was little, but it was mine, earned with my own hands. My mother came inside carrying 2 grocery bags. I noticed how she had been avoiding my gaze lately, especially when I talked about my plans to move to the city and open a larger sewing shop. There was something in her dark eyes that had always intrigued me, a deep sadness she never explained. As a child, I would ask about my father, but she would only say that he had left when I was a baby, nothing more. "Mum, Mr. Johnson said the order of soccer jerseys turned out great," I commented, trying to get a smile out of her. "That's 50 jerseys. It'll be a good check at the end of the month." Mrs. Clara nodded, but remained silent. She put the groceries away in the old refrigerator that made more noise than a truck engine, then sat in the rocking chair my grandpa had made decades ago. It was the only nice piece of furniture we had in the house. "Kayla, I need to tell you something," she said finally, in a voice that seemed to carry the weight of the world. I stopped ironing and turned to her completely. My mother rarely initiated serious conversations, so I knew it was important. Maybe she would finally tell me about my father, or about this mystery that had always hung over our family. "Your Uncle Mike is back," she said, and my stomach tied itself in a knot. Uncle Mike was my paternal grandfather's brother, a man I had only seen 3 or 4 times in my life. He always showed up in expensive clothes, talking about prosperous businesses in other cities, promising help that never came. The last time he was here, I was 16, and I remember how he looked at me in a way that made me uncomfortable. "He's interested in offering you a job," my mother continued, but there was something strange in her voice. "He said he knows people in other countries, that you could work as a model or something." My heart raced. A model? I knew I was pretty. I had long, straight brown hair, big eyes, and people always commented on my looks, but I had never thought about working in that field. The idea of leaving the town, of seeing other places, of earning enough money to change our lives, made my imagination soar. "What kind of job, Mum?" He didn't explain it clearly. He said he's coming here tomorrow to talk to you. I noticed how my mother clenched her fists as she spoke. Her hands, marked by hard work, were trembling slightly. I knelt down next to her chair. "Mum, if you don't want me to go, I won't. We'll stay here, and I'll expand the sewing business little by little." She looked at me with those eyes that held secrets, and for a moment I thought she would finally tell me everything. But she just stroked my face affectionately.
Just to make sure you keep getting our stories, subscribe to the channel, give this one a like too, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're listening from.
"You deserve a better life than this, sweetie. You always have." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining what it would be like to work as a model, travel to other countries, wear beautiful clothes, earn enough money to buy my mom a new house. Maybe we could even live together in a big city, far from that place where opportunities were as scarce as summer rain. When the neighbor's rooster crowed to announce the dawn, I was already up making coffee. My mom came down from the roof where she had hung clothes to dry, and found me dressed up, in my best navy blue dress with my hair in a neat ponytail. "You're very anxious about this conversation," she commented, but she didn't seem happy about my excitement. "Mum, what if it's true? What if this is my chance to change our lives?" Uncle Mike arrived promptly at 10 in the morning, driving a car that cost more than our entire house. He was a tall, thin man with slicked-back graying hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He wore a tailored suit and polished leather shoes that contrasted starkly with the dirt floor of our street. "Kayla, how you've grown," he said, giving me a hug that lasted longer than I expected. You're a beautiful young lady. I'm sure you'll be very successful. We sat in the small living room, where I offered him coffee and cookies I had bought especially for the occasion. Uncle Mike talked about his international connections, about modeling agencies looking for new and exotic faces, about the unique opportunity he was offering me. Where exactly would the job be? I asked, trying to sound professional. Initially in the Middle East. There's a huge demand for Western models there. You would do ad campaigns, fashion shows, maybe even some TV work. The pay would be in dollars. My mother remained silent, watching his every word with what seemed like excessive attention. When I asked about documents, contracts, and legal details, Uncle Mike waved his hand as if it were nonsense. The agency handles all that. Don't worry. You just need to be ready to travel next week. Next week? My voice came out louder than I intended. Opportunities in this business appear quickly and disappear even faster. If you really want to change your life, you need to be brave. I looked at my mother for guidance, but her face was turned toward the window, as if she were fighting some painful thought. When she finally looked at me, I saw tears held back in her eyes. Mom, it's your decision, sweetie. But the way she said it sounded like a preemptive apology. In that moment, I should have noticed the signs. My mother's nervousness, Uncle Mike's inexplicable hurry, the lack of official documentation, the vagueness about important details. But I was blinded by the possibility of finally escaping that life of limitations, of giving my mother everything she deserved. I accept, I said, and it was as if I had signed my own death warrant. Uncle Mike smiled in a way that should have alarmed me, and when he said goodbye, he whispered something in my mother's ear that made her go pale. After he left, I found my mother crying in the kitchen, holding an old photograph I had never seen before. It was an image of her as a beautiful young woman, next to a man with light eyes and tanned skin, wearing elegant clothes in what looked like an exotic setting. Who is that man, Mom? She hid the photo quickly and wiped away her tears. No one important, just someone from the past. But I had seen enough. The man in the photo had my eyes. The week passed like a hurricane. I packed my best clothes, which weren't many or very good, said goodbye to the neighbors who wished me luck with thinly veiled envy, and tried to calm my mother, who became stranger and more melancholy with each passing day. On the eve of the trip, she woke me up in the middle of the night, holding a small gold necklace with a crescent moon pendant. It was the only piece of jewelry she owned, something I had never seen her wear. I want you to take this with you, she said, putting the necklace around my neck, and promise me that no matter what happens, you'll never forget who you are. Mom, you're scaring me. It sounds like I'm not coming back. You will, sweetie. You'll always be able to come back. Just promise you'll remember who you are. I promised, even without fully understanding what she meant. Uncle Mike picked me up at dawn. My mother hugged me at the door as if it were the last time, and whispered in my ear, "If you ever find out the truth, know that I've always loved you more than my own life." The nearest airport was a 5-hour drive away. During the trip, I tried to make conversation with Uncle Mike, asking about my final destination, about the people I would be working with, about when I could send money home. His answers were always vague, and he seemed more interested in talking about how I should behave. Be polite. Don't ask too many questions. Trust the people who would be taking care of me. What if I don't fit in? What if I want to come home? Nonsense, Kayla. You're a smart girl. You'll do great. You just need to be ... flexible. The word flexible sounded strange in his mouth, loaded with a meaning I couldn't yet decipher. At the airport, he handed me a passport that looked too new, documents he didn't let me examine closely, and a sealed envelope that he said to give to the people who would receive me at my destination. He also gave me a pile of cash, more money than I had ever seen at once in my life. This money is for your personal expenses during the trip and the first few days. The rest will go directly into your bank account, which they will open for you over there. The plane was huge and luxurious, unlike anything I had imagined. I had never flown before, and the mix of fear and excitement made my stomach churn throughout the takeoff. Sitting by the window, I watched my little town get smaller below, until it completely disappeared among the clouds. During the long hours of the flight, with layovers in New York City, and then in London, I had too much time to think. I went over every word of the conversation with Uncle Mike, every strange expression from my mother, every detail that didn't seem to fit together perfectly. But I always came to the same conclusion. I was doing the right thing. It was my chance to change my life. The flight attendant, an elegant woman who spoke several languages, was very kind to me. When she found out it was my first international trip, she gave me tips about the country I was going to, about local customs, about how to behave. She was the one who warned me, subtly, that some things worked very differently in the Middle East. "You're very young and very beautiful," she said during the layover in London. "Just be cautious and trust your instincts." I didn't quite understand what she meant at the time, but her words kept echoing in my mind. When we finally landed, it was 2 in the morning local time. The airport was immense, modern, with people of all nationalities rushing around. I looked for the sign with my name on it, as Uncle Mike had instructed, and found it in the hands of 2 men wearing dark suits. "Kayla?" one of them asked in English with a heavy accent. "Yes, that's me." They greeted me politely but distantly, took my luggage, and led me to a car with tinted windows waiting at the airport door. During the ride, I tried to look at the city through the window, but it was hard to see much in the darkness. What I could make out were very tall buildings lit by golden lights, an architecture that mixed modernity with elements that looked like something out of a fairy tale. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Hotel," one of them replied curtly. But we didn't seem to be heading to the commercial area of the city. The streets became wider, with less traffic, and high walls and elegant gates began to appear. After nearly an hour's drive, the car stopped in front of a massive gate decorated with golden details. "We're here," the driver said. When the gate opened and we drove in, my breath caught in my throat. It wasn't a hotel. It was a palace. Perfectly manicured gardens stretched out on all sides, illuminated by lamps that created a magical atmosphere even in the dark of early morning. Water fountains sang softly as the car drove down the light-colored paved path to the main entrance of what looked like a building straight out of a dream. The palace was an impressive blend of traditional Arabic architecture with modern touches. Elegant columns supported delicately carved arches, while half-moon-shaped windows allowed the golden light from the interior to spill into the gardens. Everything was big, luxurious, and intimidating. 2 men dressed in white tunics came down the marble steps to greet us. One of them, older, with a carefully trimmed grey beard, addressed me in perfect English. "Mrs. Kayla, welcome. I am Hassan, the house administrator. I hope you had a comfortable trip." "Thank you," I managed to reply, still trying to process exactly where I was. My luggage was taken from the car by other servants, and Hassan led me through the main hall. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. Polished marble floors reflected gigantic crystal chandeliers. Persian rugs covered specific areas, creating cozy spaces, and paintings with golden Arabic calligraphy decorated the high walls. "You must be tired from your trip," Hassan said, as we walked down corridors that seemed endless. "We will take you to your room so you can rest. Tomorrow you will be introduced to the other young ladies and receive all the necessary instructions." "Other young ladies?" "Yes, there are 6 other young women staying here at the moment, all in similar situations to yours." I didn't know what similar situations meant, but I was too tired to ask more questions. Hassan stopped in front of a carved wooden door and opened it, revealing a room that was larger than the entire house I had grown up in. The bed had a canopy with blue silk curtains. There was an antique vanity with a gold-framed mirror, a small sofa placed near the window, and a door that led to a private bathroom with a marble tub that looked like a small pool. "Your clothes have been organized in the closet," Hassan said. "Tomorrow, one of the maids will come to help you get dressed properly for breakfast. Please do not leave the room until they come for you." "I can't leave the room. It's for your own safety and comfort. This is a very large house. It would be easy to get lost." After he left and I heard the key turn in the lock, a cold shiver ran down my spine. I ran to the door and tried to open it, but it was locked from the outside. I went to the window and looked down. I was on the 2nd floor, and even if I could get down, there were high walls surrounding the entire property. I sat on the too-soft bed and tried to collect my thoughts. I was clearly not in a normal hotel, and it definitely didn't seem like I was there to work as a model. The flight attendant's words came back to me, "Trust your instincts." And my instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. I opened my suitcase looking for my cell phone, but there was no signal. I tried to call my mother, but the calls wouldn't go through. It was as if I was completely isolated from the outside world. Exhausted from fatigue and tension, I ended up falling asleep in my clothes, hugging a pillow that smelled of roses and jasmine. I woke up to someone gently knocking on the door. The golden sunlight streamed through the window, and I could see the palace gardens better. They were even more impressive during the day, with very tall palm trees, colorful flower beds, and several people working to keep everything perfect. "Come in," I said, sitting up in bed and trying to fix my hair. A young woman came in, carrying a tray with tea and fruit. She was beautiful, with expressive dark eyes and a light green scarf that highlighted her delicate face. She seemed to be about my age. "Good morning, I'm Amina," she said in English with a slight foreign accent. "I came to help you get ready." "You speak English?" "I speak several languages, it's part of my job here." She put the tray on the small table near the window and turned to me. "You must be confused and scared." "It's normal." "Where exactly am I? And why can't I leave my room?" Amina glanced quickly at the door, as if checking if anyone was listening. Then she came closer and lowered her voice. "You are in the house of a very powerful man. He acquires young women from various parts of the world for ... companionship." My stomach turned. Companionship? There are different types of arrangements. Some stay for a few weeks, others for months. Some are treated better than others, depending on special circumstances. I don't understand any of this. I came to work as a model. My uncle said ... Amina looked at me with a mix of pity and sadness. "Your uncle lied, Kayla. You were sold." The word sold echoed in my brain like a punch. I felt the world spinning around me, and Amina held me by the shoulders. "Breathe. I know it's a shock, but you need to calm down and listen to me carefully. Sold for how much?" The words came out of my mouth before I could control them. $200,000. The number was so absurd it almost seemed unreal. $200,000 was more money than I could earn in several lifetimes working as a seamstress in my town. "But there's something strange about your case," Amina continued. "Normally, the young ladies are taken directly to fulfill their obligations. You have been here for 2 weeks and have not yet been called to meet the Sheikh." "The Sheikh?" "The man who bought you. Sheikh Adam al-Rahman. He is a member of one of the most important families in this country, has businesses in various parts of the world, and owns several palaces like this one." My mind was struggling to process all this. "And the other young ladies who are here? Each one has a different story. Some were sold by desperate families. Others were deceived like you. But they are all in the same situation now." Amina helped me choose clothes from the closet. Long, elegant dresses that I had never worn before, very different from the simple clothes I had brought in my suitcase. As I got ready, she continued to explain how things worked in that place. "The Sheikh is a ... complicated man. Sometimes he is gentle, sometimes he is terrible. But there is something you need to know. He specifically asked to see you today." My blood ran cold. "Today?" "After lunch. Hassan will come to get you." I finished getting ready with trembling hands. The dark blue dress was beautiful and fit me well, but it felt like a costume, as if I were dressing up to play a role I didn't understand. "Amina, do you know any way to get out of here?" She shook her head sadly. "Many have tried. The walls are high, there are guards everywhere, and we are in the middle of the desert. Even if you could get out of the palace, where would you go? You don't know the language. You don't have documents. You don't have money. So there's no hope?" Amina looked me directly in the eyes. "There's one strange thing about your case, Kayla. The Sheikh specifically asked for your full name, your mother's name." When Hassan answered, he was silent for a very long time. "That has never happened before. What could that mean?" "I don't know. But maybe it's your salvation." She picked up the coffee tray and headed for the door, but before leaving, she turned to me one more time. "Whatever the reason he brought you here, Kayla, don't let them crush who you are. Sometimes, our only weapon is our own identity." The rest of the morning passed in a fog of anxiety and contradictory thoughts. I stood at the window watching the activity in the garden, trying to memorize every detail that might be useful later. I saw gardeners, armed guards walking discreetly among the trees, and other young women strolling in a specific area that seemed to be designated for them. All of them wore elegant clothes and looked well cared for, but there was something in their movements that suggested resignation, as if they were beautiful birds in a golden cage. One of them, a blonde young lady who looked European, looked toward my window and waved sadly. I waved back, feeling an immediate connection with someone who was probably going through the same situation as me. Around noon, Hassan knocked on my door accompanied by Amina and an older woman who introduced herself as Mrs. Fatima. "It's time to meet the Sheikh," Hassan said formally. "Mrs. Fatima will accompany you and explain the proper protocol." Mrs. Fatima was an imposing woman, with grey hair in a perfect bun and clothes that showed authority. Her eyes were cold but not cruel, more like someone who had seen a lot in life and had developed a protective shell. "Listen carefully," she said as we walked through the corridors. "When you enter the room, wait until you are invited to sit. Do not speak unless you are asked something. Keep your eyes lowered out of respect. If he offers you something to eat or drink, accept with gratitude. And if he wants to, he won't touch you today. It's just a first meeting." We stopped in front of two huge dark wooden doors carved with symbols I didn't recognize. Hassan opened them slowly, revealing a room that looked like it was from a fairy tale or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. The environment was circular, with a very high dome decorated with golden mosaics that created hypnotic patterns. Persian rugs covered the floor, silk cushions were arranged around a low marble table, and incense burned in small containers scattered throughout the room, creating a dense, perfumed atmosphere. And there, sitting in an armchair that looked like a throne, was the man who had paid $200,000 for me. Sheikh Adan al-Rahman was different from what I had imagined. He was not an old, repulsive man, as my mind had created. He seemed to be between 40 and 50 years old, with dark hair with some grey threads at the temples, tan desert skin, and light green eyes that were almost hypnotic. He wore traditional white clothes that enhanced his elegant and authoritative posture. But what shocked me was not his appearance. It was the look he gave me when I entered the room. It was not the look of a predator assessing his prey, as I had expected. It was something much more complex. Surprise, recognition, and something that looked almost like pain. "Come closer," he said in perfect English, with a deep voice that echoed through the room. I walked slowly to the cushion area, keeping my eyes lowered as Mrs. Fatima had instructed. But when he said, "Look at me," I couldn't disobey. Our eyes met, and it was as if time had stopped. There was something familiar about that face, something that stirred up memories I didn't know I had. "What is your mother's full name?" he asked, leaning forward. "Clara Santos Silva," I replied, surprised by the question. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if absorbing a painful piece of information. "And she never told you about her past?" "No, sir. She was always very private about it." Sheikh Adam stood up and walked to one of the windows, standing with his back to me for several minutes. The silence in the room was almost suffocating, broken only by the distant sound of the fountains in the garden. "Hassan," he said finally, without turning around, "leave us alone." Hassan, Mrs. Fatima, and Amina left the room, and I was left there, sitting on the cushions, with my heart beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. "You have her eyes," he said, still looking out the window. "Exactly the same eyes." "Sir?" He turned to me, and now there were tears held back in those green eyes. 23 years ago, I met a young American woman. She was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, and also the bravest. Her name was Clara, but I called her Saida. My world came crashing down. She was here in this very palace, but in very different circumstances. She worked for a diplomatic family, taking care of the children. We met during a party, and it was as if the entire universe aligned in a single moment. He came closer and knelt in front of me, gently holding my face with his hands. We loved each other deeply, intensely, forbiddenly. She got pregnant, and I wanted to marry her, to bring her into my life officially. But my family, My family wouldn't allow it. I was already promised in marriage to strengthen political alliances. The tears I had been holding back began to stream freely down my face. She went back to the States without telling me exactly where. I looked for her for years, but the country is vast, and she had completely disappeared. "You are your father," he said, his voice cracking, "and the man who just bought his own daughter for $200,000. The revelation hit me like lightning. Everything started to make sense. My mother's nervousness, the hidden photo, the necklace with the crescent moon she had put around my neck, the way Uncle Mike had whispered something in her ear before he left. My mother knew. Apparently, yes, and your uncle did too. He came to me a few months ago, said he knew where my lost daughter was, and that you needed financial help. He offered to sell me information about you for a high price. I thought he was lying, that it was some kind of scam." Sheikh Adam stepped away and walked to a table where several documents were scattered. "But then he showed me photos of you, your full name, details about your mother that only someone very close would know. And I couldn't resist the possibility of finally finding you. So you bought me knowing I was your daughter?" "No." He turned quickly, with desperation in his eyes. "I paid thinking I was rescuing you. Your uncle said you were being forced to work in terrible conditions, that there were dangerous men interested in taking you into prostitution. He said the only way to save you was to bring you here, for my protection." I felt a confusing mix of relief and anger. But I wasn't in danger. I was working honestly, taking care of my mother, building a life. I know that now. When you arrived and I saw that you were healthy, well cared for, clearly not someone who needed to be rescued, I realized I had been deceived. But then Hassan told me your full name, and everything became clear. He sat back down on the cushions, looking exhausted. "Kayla, you need to understand. In the last 23 years, not a single day has passed that I haven't thought about your mother and the possibility of having a child in the States. It was the greatest pain of my life to let her go. And now? What happens now? Now I need to find a way to fix this terrible situation. You can't stay here as the other young women. You are my daughter. You are royal blood. But I also can't just announce this publicly." "Why?" Sheikh Adam sighed deeply. "Because I have an official wife and legitimate children. In our culture, in our politics, publicly admitting that I have a daughter born out of wedlock, especially with a foreigner, could cause a scandal that would destroy our family and our position. So I'm a problem for you. You are the most precious thing I've found in decades. But yes, your existence here represents a very complex problem." We were silent for a few minutes, both of us absorbing the magnitude of the situation. I was trying to process that I had found my father, something I had dreamed of my whole life, but in the most bizarre and dangerous circumstances possible. "Do the other young women know who you are?" I asked. "No. To them, to all the servants, you are just another ... acquisition, and you need to stay that way until I decide what to do." "And your family? Your wife and children?" "My wife, Zara, is an intelligent but jealous woman. If she finds out who you really are, your life will be in danger. My children, some might accept you, others would see you as a threat to their inheritance." "Are you saying I could die for being your daughter?" "I'm saying the situation is delicate and needs to be handled with a lot of care." He stood up and went to a safe hidden behind a rug. From it, he took out a small carved wooden box and came back to me. "This belonged to your mother," he said, opening the box. Inside was a necklace identical to the one I was wearing, but with a sun-shaped pendant. When I brought the two pendants together, they fit perfectly, forming a complete circle. We gave one to each other as a symbol that no matter what happened, we would always be two halves of the same whole. When she left, she took the moon and left the sun with me. I held the two pendants together in the palm of my hand and felt a deep connection with my mother, with the impossible love story that had resulted in my existence. "Does she still love me?" he asked, with a vulnerability that contrasted with his previous authority. "She never talked about you, but there was always a sadness in her eyes that now makes sense. And she was desperate when she found out I was coming here. She tried to stop you. Not directly, but I could tell she was fighting against something." Sheikh Adam closed his eyes, absorbing the information. "She probably recognized the name of the region when your uncle mentioned the destination." She must have suspected there was some connection to me. Suddenly, we heard hurried footsteps in the corridor, and Hassan entered the room without knocking, something that was clearly a breach of protocol. "Sir, I apologize for the intrusion, that Lady Zara is returning early from her trip. She will arrive within an hour." Sheikh Adam went pale. She wasn't supposed to return until the end of the week. There was a change of plans, and she already knows about the new acquisition. My father, it was still strange to think of him that way, stood up quickly and started pacing the room, clearly trying to formulate a plan. "Hassan, take Kayla back to her room immediately, and make sure she stays there until further notice." "Sir," Hassan hesitated. "Lady Zara expressed interest in meeting the new young lady. She said she would come to visit her later today." The silence that followed was charged with tension. Sheikh Adam looked at me with an expression that mixed protection and despair. "Kayla, you need to understand. My wife is not a cruel woman, but she is possessive. And when she feels threatened, she can be dangerous." "Threatened by me?" "By any young, beautiful woman who enters this house. There have been incidents in the past." Hassan coughed discreetly. "Sir, it might be prudent to prepare Lady Kayla for the meeting. Instruct her on how to behave." "Yes, you're right." Sheikh Adam turned to me. "When my wife comes to visit you, you must be respectful but not too submissive. She may interpret excessive submission as fear, and fear awakens her predatory instincts. Be polite, answer her questions honestly, but don't reveal anything about our conversation today." "What if she finds out?" "She can't find out. Your life literally depends on it." Hassan escorted me back to my room, and along the way he whispered quickly, "Lady Zara has ways of making people talk. Be smarter than her." Back in my room, I sat on the bed trying to organize everything I had discovered. In just a few hours, my life had been completely turned upside down. I had found my father, discovered I was sold by my own uncle, and was now about to face a woman who apparently represented a mortal danger to me. I touched the necklace around my neck, now knowing the full meaning behind it, and thought of my mother. She had kept this secret for over 20 years, carrying the weight of an impossible love alone, and raising a daughter who was the living memory of that love. As bizarre as the situation was, I felt a strange sense of completeness. I finally knew where my green eyes came from, my stubbornness, my tendency to dream big. I also understood why I had always felt different in town, as if I didn't completely belong there. But now I had a much more immediate problem: how to survive the meeting with Lady Zara without revealing who I really was. Amina appeared in my room an hour later, carrying a tray with tea, and looking more nervous than usual. "Lady Zara has arrived," she said, arranging the cups with slightly trembling hands.
Since you've been here with me all this time, it means you enjoy our story. So, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next ones. Give this one a like, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from.
"She wants to see you in half an hour." "Amina, I need to ask you a question, and I need you to be honest with me." She stopped what she was doing and looked at me intently. "What happened to the other young ladies who were here before?" "The ones who disappeared." Amina looked at the door, made sure it was closed, and sat next to me on the bed. "Some were transferred to other places. Some were dismissed when they didn't please. And some what? Some made Lady Zara feel threatened." "And what happened to them?" "Accidents. Always accidents. One fell from the balcony of her room. Another had a severe allergic reaction to something she ate. A third one simply disappeared one night and was never seen again." My blood ran cold. Accidents. Lady Zara is very smart. There's never any proof, never any witnesses, just ... Unfortunate accidents. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because there's something different about you, Kayla. The Sheikh treats you differently, and that will make Lady Zara even more dangerous." Amina helped me get ready for the meeting, choosing a conservative beige dress that was neither too flashy nor too plain. As she fixed my hair, she continued to give me survival advice. "She will try to provoke you, to make you lose your composure. Don't react. She will ask invasive personal questions. Answer, but without giving unnecessary details. And most importantly, don't show fear. She can smell fear." "How do you know so much about her?" "I've been here for 3 years. I've seen a lot. And why are you still here? Why haven't you tried to escape? Amina smiled sadly. Where would I escape to? My family sold me to pay off my father's gambling debts. I have nowhere to go back to, and here at least I have food, a roof, and some security. As long as I remain invisible and useful. A few minutes before the scheduled time, Hassan came to get me. This time, we walked toward a different wing of the palace, more modern and luxurious. The walls were decorated with contemporary paintings and photographs of the royal family at official events. We stopped in front of a double-frosted glass door that opened automatically, revealing an elegant living room with modern furniture in shades of white and gold. Huge windows offered a panoramic view of the gardens, and the air conditioning kept the environment cool and perfumed. Lady Zara was sitting on a white sofa, wearing a turquoise silk dress that enhanced her dark skin and shiny black hair. She was a beautiful woman, probably in her late 30s, with almond-shaped eyes and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her jewelry was discreet but clearly very expensive, and there was an aura of power around her that was almost tangible. "So you're the famous Kayla," she said in English, sizing me up from head to toe. "Sit down." I sat in the indicated armchair, keeping my back straight, and my hands folded in my lap. "You are pretty," she continued, "but not extraordinarily pretty. I wonder why my husband paid so much for you." I didn't answer, as it didn't seem to be a question that required a response. "Don't you speak English?" "I speak a little," I replied, purposefully adopting a heavier accent to sound less educated. "Oh, so you do, good." She stood up and began to circle around me like a predator studying its prey. "Where are you from in America?" "From a small town in the Midwest." "Family?" "Just my mother." "And how did you end up here?" I took a deep breath before answering, remembering Amina's advice. "My uncle said there was a job as a model. I needed the money." "Ah, yes. The old story of the dream of being a model." Her laugh was crystal clear and cruel. How many girls fall for that same lie? She stopped in front of me and bent down, placing her hands on the arms of the armchair and bringing her face very close to mine. "I'm going to be clear with you, dear. I know every move my husband makes, every penny he spends, every person who enters this house. I know he has treated you, especially since you arrived. That makes me curious." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course not." She moved away and went to a side table where there was a jewelry box. "My husband has had many companions over the years, some more memorable than others." She opened the box and took out a pearl necklace that looked worth a fortune. This necklace belonged to a very beautiful young woman who was here 2 years ago. Catherine, from France. She also received special treatment from my husband, until one day she had a terrible accident. "What kind of accident?" "She fell from the balcony of her room in the middle of the night." "Very tragic, especially because she was pregnant." The way she said that made my blood run cold. It was not a casual piece of information. It was a veiled threat. "And this ring," she continued, showing a diamond ring, "belonged to Sarah from Ukraine. Also very special to my husband. Unfortunately, she had a severe allergic reaction to something she ate. The doctors couldn't save her." I understood perfectly what she was doing. She was showing me trophies of women she had eliminated. "Ma'am," I said, standing up slowly, "I think there's a misunderstanding. I have no interest in your husband beyond the respect due to someone who offered me shelter." "Shelter?" She laughed again. "Dear, you're not here out of charity. You were bought and paid for. Your function is specific. Then why haven't I been called to fulfill that function yet?" It was a risky question, but I needed to understand what she knew. Lady Zara looked at me with a calculating expression. "Good question. Why is my husband taking so long to enjoy his acquisition?" She came closer again, and this time I noticed there was something different in her eyes. It wasn't just jealousy or possessiveness. It was a kind of dangerous intelligence, as if she were putting a mental puzzle together. "You remind me of someone," she said slowly. "I can't quite place who, but there's something familiar about your face." My heart pounded, but I kept a neutral expression. "People always say I have a common face." "No, it's not that. It's something specific." She moved away and went to a bookshelf where there were several framed photographs. I have an excellent memory for faces. I never forget a face. She was looking at a photograph that I couldn't see well from my position, but I noticed how her expression subtly changed. "Hassan," she called, and he appeared immediately at the door. "Bring the old albums, specifically the ones from the 2000s. "Yes, ma'am." As we waited for Hassan to return, Lady Zara continued to study me in a way that made me extremely uncomfortable. It was as if she was trying to dismantle my appearance into separate components to make some kind of comparison. "You have very interesting eyes," she commented. "Green ones are rare in your part of America, aren't they? My grandmother had light eyes. Genetic inheritance. And your mother, what is she like?" "A simple, hard-working woman. A laundress. Her name? Clara." I saw something pass quickly through her eyes, but she disguised it well. Hassan returned carrying 3 thick photo albums. Lady Zara placed them on the coffee table and began to flip through the first one, occasionally looking at me, and then back at the photos. "Ah, here," she said finally, stopping on a specific page. I knew I had seen that face before. She turned the album in my direction, and my world came crashing down for the second time that day. It was a photograph of my mother, 23 years younger, looking beautiful, smiling next to Sheikh Adam at some formal event. She was wearing an elegant blue dress, and the necklace with the crescent moon pendant that was now around my neck. "You are not the daughter of a simple laundress," Lady Zara said in a dangerously calm voice. "You are the daughter of the American bitch who almost destroyed my marriage." The silence that followed Lady Zara's revelation was deafening. She closed the album slowly, her eyes never leaving me, like a feline that had just cornered its prey. My mind worked frantically, trying to find a way out of a situation that had become deadly in a matter of seconds. "So," she said, standing up and walking to the window, "the bastard daughter has come home." "I didn't know ... double quotes, of course you knew." Her voice was ice cold now, all the previous false courtesy gone. "You planned all this. Your mother sent you here to try to claim some kind of inheritance, or maybe to rekindle an old romance." "That's not true. I didn't even know my father was alive until today." Lady Zara turned abruptly. "So you admit he's your father?" I realized my mistake too late. I had fallen into her trap, confirming exactly what she suspected. "Interesting," she continued, sitting back down. "Very interesting indeed. My husband buys a Brazilian prostitute for $200,000, and she happens to be his own daughter. What an extraordinary coincidence. Lady Zara, I swear that ... Shut up." Her voice cut through the air like a blade. "You're going to listen to me now, and you're going to listen very carefully." She stood up again and went to a small drinks bar in the corner of the room, pouring herself something that looked like whiskey. 23 years ago, an American housekeeper almost destroyed my family. She seduced my fiancé, got pregnant by him, and nearly cancelled our wedding. Do you know how much work it took to hush up that scandal? How much money was spent on bribes and threats to keep the story out of the press? She took a sip of the drink before continuing. "We finally got rid of her, sent her back to the hole she came from. And now, more than 2 decades later, the little daughter shows up here. I didn't come here on my own free will. I was tricked. By your uncle, I presume. A smart man, I must admit. He found a way to make money by selling his niece and still causing problems in my family." Lady Zara finished her drink and put the glass on the table with more force than necessary. "But he underestimated one important thing. Me. What are you going to do? The right question is, what are you going to do? Because, you see, darling, you have a very serious problem now." She came closer again, and this time I noticed something genuinely menacing in her posture. "If I tell my children that there's a bastard trying to claim part of their inheritance, they'll kill you before sunset. If I tell the family's council of elders that my husband brought his illegitimate daughter to live as a concubine, the scandal will be so big that it could bring down our entire lineage. So what do you want? I want you to disappear. Completely. As if you had never existed." "And how would I do that?" Lady Zara smiled, but it was a smile that had nothing human in it. "Leave that to me. I have experience in making people disappear." Hassan, who had remained silent near the door throughout the conversation, coughed discreetly. "Ma'am, the Sheikh requested that." "The Sheikh doesn't need to know about this conversation yet," Lady Zara interrupted. For now, she turned to me again. You have until tomorrow to decide. Either you leave voluntarily, and I will arrange the means for that, or you will have one of those unfortunate accidents I mentioned earlier. What if I tell the Sheikh my father about this conversation? You can tell him, but think carefully. He has to choose between the wife who gave him legitimate children and a respectable position in society, or a bastard who appeared out of nowhere and could destroy everything he's built. What do you think he'll choose? Her words hit me like punches to the gut because I knew she was right. As much as Sheikh Adam had shown affection for me, he didn't really know me. I was a risk, a complication in his ordered life. Hassan, take our guest back to her room and make sure she has plenty of time to reflect on our options. Hassan escorted me back the same way, but this time the silence between us was charged with tension. When we got to my room, he held my arm before I went in. She's not bluffing, he whispered. Lady Zara never bluffs. What do I do, Hassan? Pray that the Sheikh finds a solution before it's too late. He gently pushed me into the room and closed the door. I heard the key turn in the lock, but this time the sound seemed much more definitive, much more menacing. I sat on the bed and tried to organize my thoughts. In less than 24 hours, I had discovered that my father was a powerful sheikh, that I had been sold by my own uncle, and now I was being threatened with death by a stepmother I didn't even know existed until a few hours ago. But instead of despair, I felt something different growing inside me. Rage. Rage at the uncle who sold me as if I were cattle. Rage at the system that allowed women to be bought and sold. Rage at Lady Zara, who killed people as if they were annoying insects. I touched the necklace around my neck, now knowing the full meaning behind it, and thought of my mother. She had faced this woman 23 years ago, pregnant and alone, and yet she had found the strength to return to the States and raise me with dignity. If she could survive, I could too. But first, I needed a plan. I went to the window and carefully studied the garden below. I memorized the guards' schedules, the blind spots of the surveillance, the possible escape routes. Then, I examined every inch of my room looking for something that could be useful. In the vanity drawer, I found stationery and an expensive pen. I started writing a letter to my mother, explaining everything I had discovered. If something happened to me, at least she would know the truth. As I was writing, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I quickly hid the letter and pretended to be fixing my hair when the door opened. It was Amina, carrying a dinner tray, but her face was pale and worried. How did it go with Lady Zara? She asked, placing the tray on the table. She found out who I am. Amina dropped the lid of one of the dishes, making a noise that echoed through the room. She knows you single quotes, the Sheikh's daughter, and she gave me until tomorrow to disappear voluntarily. Or I'll have an accident. Amina sat down heavily in the chair, putting her hands on her face. That's terrible, Kayla. You can't run away. Others have tried before and never succeeded. And you can't tell the Sheikh because because he'll have to choose between his official family and me. And I know which choice he'll make. So what are you going to do? I looked at her with a determination that surprised me. I'm going to turn the tables. How? Lady Zara has power because people are afraid of her, but all power has weaknesses. I just need to find hers. Amina looked at me as if I had gone crazy. Kayla, you don't understand the kind of people you're dealing with. They have unlimited resources, connections everywhere, and no moral scruples. And I have something they don't have. What? I have nothing to lose. I spent the rest of the night talking with Amina, extracting from her every possible piece of information about the family dynamics, about Lady Zara's weak points, about the people who worked in the palace and their loyalties. I discovered that Zara had 2 children, Ahmad, 19, who was studying in London, and Nasser, 16, who lived in the palace but spent most of his time in sports activities. There was also an older daughter from the Sheikh's previous marriage, named Aisha, who was a doctor and lived in another country. Aisha always had a complicated relationship with Lady Zara, Amina told me. They've discreetly hated each other for years. Why? Because Aisha knew about your mother. She was a teenager when the romance happened, and she always thought her father had made the wrong choice by marrying Zara for political convenience. That information planted a seed in my mind. If Aisha knew about my mother and didn't approve of her father's marriage. Maybe she could be an ally. How can I get in touch with her? That would be very dangerous, Kayla. Lady Zara monitors all communications. There has to be a way. Amina was thoughtful for a few minutes. There's one thing. Aisha has a friend who works at the hospital where she practices. Sometimes he comes here to bring medicine for the staff. If I could talk to him discreetly. Would you do that? For you? Yes. There's something about you that reminds me of my younger sister. And besides, I'm tired of living in fear. We talked until almost dawn, meticulously planning every move. When Amina finally left my room, I knew exactly what I had to do. I wasn't going to run away. I wasn't going to hide. And I definitely wasn't going to die without a fight. Lady Zara had underestimated something fundamental about me. I was the daughter of Clara Santos Silva, a woman who had faced a powerful sheikh and an entire society while pregnant and alone, and had won by raising a strong and independent daughter. And I was the daughter of Sheikh Adam al-Rahman, a man who had built an empire through intelligence and determination. I had the best of both worlds running in my veins. Now I just needed to use that to survive. The next day dawned with a sandstorm that darkened the sky and covered everything with a golden film. I looked out the window and saw the gardeners running to protect the plants, while the guards took shelter under the awnings. It was the perfect weather for what I was planning. Amina arrived early with breakfast and a conspiratorial look. I managed to talk to Karim, Aisha's friend, she whispered as she set the table. She's arriving tonight for a surprise visit. Apparently, she found out through contacts at the hospital that there was a recent special acquisition. She knows about me? Karim said she suspected something when she heard her father had paid an extraordinary amount for a young American woman. Aisha has a very good memory about the family's history. And does Lady Zara know she's coming? No. Aisha said it's an emergency medical visit. One of the oldest employees is sick. Lady Zara can't question it without sounding inhuman. I felt a spark of hope, but I knew I couldn't rely solely on Aisha's help. I needed to have my own plan ready. Amina, I need you to get me a few things. What? First, a detailed map of the palace. Second, a way to communicate with the outside world. And third, access to Lady Zara's personal documents. Amina looked at me as if I had asked her to steal the moon. Kayla, that's impossible. Her documents are in a safe in her private office, which has electronic security. All external communication is monitored, and detailed maps of the palace are considered security information. There has to be a way. Think. She was silent for a few minutes, biting her lower lip as she did when she was concentrating. There's one thing. Lady Zara's office is directly above the room you're in, and there's an old ventilation system that connects the two floors. Are you suggesting I climb through the ventilation duct? Not exactly, but the duct goes through my room, which is on the staff floor. If I could open the vent during the sandstorm, when everyone is distracted. It would be very dangerous for you. Kayla, all of us are in danger every day here. At least this time it would be for a good cause. We spent the morning meticulously planning. Amina drew me a basic diagram of the palace, showing where the security points were, the family's rooms, and especially Lady Zara's office. She always goes to the spa on Thursday afternoons, Amina explained. She stays there for at least 2 hours. That would be our best window of opportunity. And the guards? During sandstorms, they focus on the main entrances. The interior of the palace is less guarded. Around noon, Hassan appeared in my room with a somber expression. Lady Zara wants to see you at 3 o'clock, he said formally, for your final decision. After he left, I felt my stomach clench. I had only 3 hours to execute my plan before Lady Zara's ultimatum. Amina came back an hour later, carrying a staff uniform. Wear this, she said, handing me a uniform similar to the one she was wearing. We're going to do this now while Lady Zara is at the spa. I changed clothes quickly. The uniform was simple, but would allow me to move around the palace without attracting attention, as long as I kept my head down. Amina guided me through service corridors that I didn't even know existed. We went up a narrow staircase to the staff floor, where the rooms were much smaller and simpler than the guests. This is my room, she said, opening a small door. The space was cramped but organized, with a single bed, a small desk, and a closet. Amina went straight to a ventilation grate high up on the wall. The duct goes directly through Lady Zara's office, she explained, using a screwdriver to open the screws. You'll have to climb up, through straight for about 30 feet, and then go down through the grate in the office. What if she comes back early? I'll stand guard and knock on the wall 3 times if there's any danger. The grate opened with a soft creak. The duct was larger than I expected, but it would still be a tight squeeze. Amina gave me a small flashlight and helped me climb up. Kayla, she said before I fully entered the duct, if something goes wrong, if you get caught, say I forced you to do this. Say I threatened to hurt you. I would never do that. Do it. One of us has to survive to tell this story. I entered the ventilation duct and began to crawl in the dark. The space was dusty and claustrophobic, and the noise of the sandstorm outside muffled any sound I might make. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, I saw light coming from below through another grate. I peered carefully and saw that I was exactly above Lady Zara's office. The room was elegant and organized, with a huge mahogany desk, bookshelves full of books, and several computer screens showing different security systems of the house. But what caught my attention most was an open safe behind the desk. Apparently, Lady Zara had left in a hurry and forgotten to close it. I carefully opened the grate and climbed down into the office, landing silently on the thick rug. I went straight to the safe and found exactly what I was looking for. Folders with documents about all the previous acquisitions. Catherine from France, bought for 150,000 euros, died after 3 months. Sarah from Ukraine, bought for $180,000, died after 5 months. Elena from Romania, bought for $200,000, died after 2 weeks. And there was more, much more. Lady Zara kept meticulous records of every woman she had killed, including photos, methods of death, and even contacts of the bribed doctors who signed false death certificates. But what really shocked me was finding a folder with my name on it. She had planned my death even before she found out who I was. Kayla Santos Silva, planned accident, fall from the balcony during a panic attack. Responsible doctor, Dr. Rashid Al Mahmoud, bribe approved, $50,000. I quickly photographed all the documents with the cell phone Amina had borrowed from another employee. I had enough evidence to destroy Lady Zara, but I knew that wouldn't be enough alone. She had a lot of power and many contacts. I needed something more. I searched the desk drawers and found personal correspondence, bank statements, and finally, something that made my heart race. A folder marked Blackmail Emergency. Inside were compromising photographs of several important men in intimate situations with the women who had been acquired. Lady Zara was not just running a human trafficking ring, she was using the victims to blackmail influential political figures and businessmen. And in the middle of all this, I found photographs of Sheikh Adam himself. The images showed my father in intimate situations with several of the young women, including some I recognized from the files of accidental deaths. Lady Zara was blackmailing her own husband. Suddenly, I heard 3 knocks on the wall. Amina was warning me that Lady Zara was coming back. I quickly photographed the blackmail documents and climbed back into the ventilation duct, putting the grate back in place just seconds before I heard the office door open. I crawled back through the duct as silently as possible, hearing Lady Zara's irritated voice below talking on the phone about some problem at the spa. When I finally got down into Amina's room, she was pale with nerves. Did you get it? I got much more than I expected. I showed her some of the photos I had taken, and I saw her face turn even paler. Kayla, this is evidence of very serious crimes. If this information leaks, it will cause an international scandal. Exactly. And that's my life insurance. What are you going to do now? I'm going to the 3 o'clock meeting with Lady Zara, but this time, I'll be the one making the demands. I went back to my room and changed, putting on my best dress and carefully arranging my hair. I hid the cell phone with the evidence in a safe place, and mentally rehearsed what I would say. Hassan came to get me promptly at 3 o'clock, and this time our walk to Lady Zara's room felt like a triumphal march instead of a walk to the gallows. Lady Zara was waiting, elegantly dressed and with a smile that promised unpleasant things. So dear, what is your decision? voluntary departure, or an unfortunate accident. I sat calmly in the armchair across from her and crossed my legs. I have a third option to propose. Oh, really? And what would that be? How about you stop threatening me and we start discussing the terms of your surrender? Lady Zara's smile disappeared instantly. I don't think you quite understood the situation, Doppelqualtz. On the contrary, I understood it perfectly. I took the cell phone out of my pocket and showed her some of the photos I had taken. The question is, do you understand the situation you've gotten yourself into? She looked at the images on the cell phone screen and her skin visibly paled. How did I get access to your private safe? How did I find out about your blackmail schemes? How did I find evidence of at least 15 murders? I smiled with the same coldness she had shown me the day before. Let's just say you underestimated who you're dealing with. Lady Zara stood up abruptly and went to the window, clearly trying to buy time to think. You have no idea of the consequences of messing with this information. There are very powerful people involved, double quotes. Yes, I saw the photos. Ministers, businessmen, even some members of other royal families. I imagine what would happen if those images reach the international newspapers. What do you want? First, a total guarantee that my life and the lives of anyone who helped me are safe. Second, the immediate end of the human trafficking scheme operated from this palace. Third, compensation for the families of all the women you murdered. That's impossible. And fourth, I continued, ignoring her objection, I want an honest conversation with my father about our family situation, without your interference. Lady Zara turned to me with eyes full of hatred. You little bitch. Do you think you can just come here and destroy everything I've built? You didn't build anything. You're a serial killer who uses your position to murder innocent women. That's not building. That's destroying. And you think your father will choose a bastard over his legitimate family? I don't know what choice he'll make, but I know he deserves to make that choice with all the available information, including the fact that his wife is a murderer who has been blackmailing him for years. At that moment, the door opened and Sheikh Adam entered the room, followed by a young and elegant woman I didn't recognize, but who had the same green eyes as my father. Aisha, Lady Zara whispered. Stepmother, the newcomer replied in an icy voice. I believe we arrived at the right time. The silence that followed was so dense I could hear my own heart beating. Sheikh Adam looked from me to Lady Zara, clearly trying to understand the tension in the air, while Aisha positioned herself strategically between her stepmother and the door. Can someone explain what's going on here? My father asked, his voice a mixture of authority and confusion. Your daughter, Lady Zara said, practically spitting the words, is trying to blackmail me. An interesting choice of words, Aisha commented, coming closer to me, considering that blackmail seems to be a family specialty. Aisha was taller than me, with black hair pulled back in an elegant bun, and wearing a lab coat over a discreet dress. Her green eyes, identical to mine and our father's, studied me with sharp intelligence. You must be Kayla, she said, extending her hand. I'm Aisha, your half-sister. I've been waiting to meet you for a long time. Waiting to meet me? I always knew you existed. When I was a teenager, I tried several times to convince Dad to look for you and your mother. Sheikh Adam approached the two of us, and for the first time since I met him, he seemed genuinely moved. Aisha, you shouldn't be here. This is complicated. Complicated? Aisha laughed, but there was no humor in her voice. Dad, buying your own daughter in a human trafficking ring goes a little beyond complicated. How did you know? I have my contacts. And when I heard that a 22-year-old American woman had been acquired for $200,000, I didn't need to be a genius to connect the dots. Lady Zara, who had remained silent during this exchange, finally intervened. Halil, your bastard daughter is threatening to expose private family information. She needs to be controlled. What kind of information? Sheikh Adam asked, turning to me. I took a deep breath before answering. It was the moment of truth. Information about the murders your wife regularly commits, about the blackmail scheme she operates using the women you buy, and about how she meticulously documents every crime. My father's face turned grey. Zara, what is she talking about? Lies. She's desperate and making up stories to... Then explain this, I said, showing him the cell phone with the photographs of the documents. Sheikh Adam took the device and began to scroll through the images. With each photo, his expression grew darker. Aisha stood beside him to see as well, and I heard her murmur, "Oh my God," several times. Catherine, Sarah, Elena. Quadhi said slowly. Zara, these are all the women who died in accidents here at the palace. Accidents happen. Planned accidents with specific methods, bribed doctors, and detailed payment amounts. Aisha pointed to one of the images. This is a record of serial killings. Lady Zara realized she was cornered, and her mask of civility finally fell completely. Do you think I did all this for pleasure? Do you think I enjoy eliminating these sluts? I did it to protect our family. Protect it from what? Sheikh Adam roared. From scandals, from blackmail, from women who could destroy our reputation. She gestured in my direction. Just like this bastard is trying to do now. And the blackmail schemes against political figures. Was that also to protect the family? Lady Zara paled again. How did you ... I saw the photos, Zara. I saw you using these vulnerable women to blackmail powerful men, including, I looked directly at my father, blackmailing you. Sheikh Adam scrolled to other photos on the cell phone and stopped abruptly. I recognized his expression. He had reached the compromising images of himself. You were blackmailing me, he said slowly, looking at his wife. All these years ... I was protecting our interests. These men paid very well to keep their indiscretions a secret. Using women I thought I was saving. Saving? Lady Zara laughed bitterly. Halil, did you really believe you were doing charity? You bought these women for lust, not for kindness. The silence that followed was devastating. I saw my father confronting the reality of his own actions, seeing how he had been manipulated, but also recognizing his own complicity. Kayla, he said finally, turning to me, I need to know. What do you want? Money? Power? Revenge? Justice? I replied simply. I want this to stop. I want the families of the dead women to know the truth. And I want the women who are still here to be freed and to be able to go home safely. Aisha nodded in approval. It's a fair demand. Fair? Lady Zara was almost shouting now. Are you going to destroy our family because of a few prostitutes? These prostitutes were daughters, sisters, some were mothers, Aisha said coldly, and you killed them in cold blood. Sheikh Adam was looking at the cell phone again, slowly scrolling through the evidence. When he finally looked up, there was a grim resolve on his face. Hassan, he called. Hassan appeared immediately at the door, as if he had been waiting outside. Sir, call security. I want Lady Zara escorted to her quarters and kept there until further notice. Halil, you can't. I can and I am. Hassan, I also want you to convene an emergency meeting with our lawyers and the family council. We need to discuss how to proceed. Immediately, sir. Lady Zara looked around the room like a cornered animal. This is a coup, she said as she was led out. And you'll regret it. After she left, the three of us were silent for a few minutes. Finally, Sheikh Adam sat down heavily in his armchair. Aisha, Kyla, I need to apologize to both of you. And I need to apologize to all the families of the women who died because of my ignorance and complacency. Dad, Aisha said, sitting on the arm of the armchair, you were manipulated. That doesn't excuse everything, but it explains a lot. And now? I asked, what happens to me? To the other women who are here? Sheikh Adam looked at me with an expression that mixed remorse and something that could have been paternal pride. Now, we do what's right. First, all the women who are here against their will be freed and will receive assistance to return home safely. Second, we will financially compensate the families of all of Zara's victims. And what about the blackmail schemes? That's more complicated. If we simply hand the evidence over to the authorities, it will cause an international scandal that could destabilize the entire region. Aisha stood up and began to walk around the room. But if we do nothing, we are complicit. There's a third option, I said slowly, an idea forming in my mind. What if we use that information to force real reforms? What do you mean? The men in the photos, politicians, businessmen. If they knew that we know about their activities, but we offered them a deal, public support for laws against human trafficking, funding for rescue organizations, Real changes in the system in exchange for discretion. Aisha stopped walking and looked at me with new admiration. That single quote's really smart. It's blackmail, Sheikh Adam said. It's justice, I corrected. The difference is that this time we're blackmailing to do good, not for personal profit. We spent the next few hours discussing the details. Aisha revealed that she had documented similar cases in other countries, and that she had contacts in international human rights organizations that could help coordinate the efforts. But there's one thing we haven't discussed yet, she said, looking between me and our father. What's going to happen to you two? With this family situation? Sheikh Adam sighed deeply. It's complicated. It doesn't have to be, I said. I didn't come here looking for a father or an inheritance. I was tricked into coming here, but I discovered things about myself that I never knew. I discovered that I have an incredible half-sister and a father who, despite his mistakes, wants to do the right thing. That you can't just go back to the States and pretend none of this happened, Aisha protested. Why not? My life is there. My mother is there. Your mother, Sheikh Adam said softly. How is she? Working too hard, worrying too much, still carrying secrets she didn't have to carry alone. I would really like to see her again, just to apologize. Maybe you can arrange that, Aisha said. But first, we need to resolve the situation here. In the days that followed, we worked tirelessly to implement our plan. The women who were being held in the palace were freed one by one, with tickets back to their home countries and substantial financial compensation. Amina chose not to return to her family. Instead, she decided to stay and help with the rescue operation we were establishing. I want to make sure this never happens to anyone again, she said. The men in the blackmail photographs were contacted discreetly. Most accepted our terms without resistance. After all, publicly supporting humanitarian causes was much better than having their indiscretions exposed in the newspapers. Lady Zara was more difficult to deal with. She refused to cooperate and threatened to expose family secrets if she was handed over to the authorities. But Aisha had prepared for that. She underestimated one thing, Aisha explained during one of our planning meetings. I have documented every suspicious death in the last 5 years. I have witnesses, medical evidence, financial records. Even if she tries to blackmail us, the evidence against her is overwhelming. In the end, Lady Zara accepted a deal, permanent exile to an isolated property in another country, with no access to family resources beyond a basic pension for survival. It was a prison sentence disguised as forced retirement. It's not perfect justice, Sheikh Adam admitted, but it's the best solution we could get without causing a political collapse in the region. Throughout this process, my relationship with my father evolved. It wasn't a typical father-daughter relationship. We were basically strangers trying to find a connection through an extraordinary situation. But there were moments of real understanding between us. One night, as we were walking through the palace gardens, he asked me, "Do you hate me for what I did? For buying women, for being blind to my wife's cruelty?" "I don't hate you," I replied honestly. "But I'm also not going to pretend everything is okay. You made terrible choices, even if you didn't know all the consequences. And you? What choices are you going to make now?" "I'm going back home. I'm going to take care of my mother. And I'm going to use what I learned here to help other women who are in similar situations." "With what resources?" I smiled. "With the resources you're going to provide. This will be your penance, to fund organizations for the rescue and prevention of human trafficking for the rest of your life." He laughed for the first time since we met. "You really are Saida's daughter." She was like that too. She turned punishment into purpose. On the eve of my departure, Aisha gave me a gift, a complete copy of all the documents we had collected, along with contacts of investigative journalists and human rights organizations around the world. "If you ever decide to make this story public, you'll have everything you need," she said. "But I also understand if you prefer to keep it private." "And you? What are you going to do?" "I'm going to continue the work here. Someone needs to supervise the reforms and make sure our father keeps his promises. He'll keep them." "How can you be so sure?" "Because now he has 2 daughters watching his every move." On the morning of my departure, Sheikh Adam accompanied me to the airport personally. During the trip, he handed me a sealed envelope. "For your mother," he said. A letter I should have written 23 years ago. Do you want her to reply? I just want her to know that I never stopped loving her, and that I'm grateful she raised such a courageous and decent daughter. At the airport, we said goodbye with an awkward but sincere hug. We weren't a traditional family, we probably never would be, but we were something. Will you come back to visit us? He asked. Maybe, when all the reforms are implemented, and I'm sure you're really making a difference. That's a good incentive for us to work faster. During the long flight back to the States, I reflected on everything that had happened. In less than 2 weeks, I had discovered my true identity, faced a serial killer, dismantled an international human trafficking ring, and found a family I didn't even know existed. But most importantly, I had discovered what I was capable of when cornered. I had discovered that I had my mother's courage and my father's strategic intelligence, and that this combination made me much stronger than I had ever imagined. When the plane finally landed in the States, I felt a deep sense of relief seeing the familiar landscapes through the window. This was my place. These were my roots. Everything I had lived abroad was part of my story now, but it didn't define who I was. My mother was waiting at the airport, and when we hugged, we both cried. I didn't say anything about what I had discovered during the trip. That would be a long conversation we would have at home, in private. How was it? She asked during the drive home. Complicated, I replied, but enlightening. You look different. I feel different. More ... That night, sitting in our small living room, I told my mother the whole story. I handed her Sheikh Adam's letter and watched her hands tremble as she read it. He really wrote this, she said, with tears in her eyes. He never stopped loving you, Mom. And he never stopped wondering about me. Do you forgive him for what he did? I'm learning to forgive, and he's learning to redeem himself. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Aisha. The reforms were progressing quickly. The rescue organization had already freed 15 women from similar situations, and Sheikh Adam had donated $2 million to organizations fighting human trafficking. And Lady Zara? Isolated and powerless. Sometimes we get reports that she's trying to cause trouble, but without resources or connections, she's no longer a threat. And the victims' families? All have been contacted and compensated. Some are prosecuting through legal channels, but most are satisfied to know that the person responsible has been punished, and that other women are being protected. 6 months later, I decided to use part of the financial compensation I had received to open a sewing shop in our city, but with a special purpose: to employ women who had been victims of domestic violence or human trafficking, offering not only work, but professional training and psychological support. Why these women specifically? My mother asked when I explained the project. Because I know what it's like to feel sold, betrayed, with no options. And I know that with the right opportunity, we can rise up and help others do the same. The shop grew quickly. Soon we had contracts with larger companies, and I was traveling regularly to other cities to replicate the model. My mother, finally free from financial worries, went back to school and became one of the most respected counselors for the project. A year after my return, Aisha came to visit us in the States. It was strange to see her in our simple house, but she adapted naturally, helping in the kitchen and talking to the women at the shop about their experiences. You've built something impressive here, she said, watching one of our employees teach embroidery techniques to a group of teenagers. We built it, I corrected. None of this would be possible without our father's funding. He's very proud, you know. He talks about you to anyone who will listen. And you? Are you happy with the changes there? Extremely. We transformed the palace into a rehabilitation center for victims of human trafficking. Ironic, isn't it? The place that was used to imprison women is now used to free them. That night, the three of us, me, Aisha, and my mother, stayed up late talking about everything. About the past, about the present, about plans for the future. You know you're a very peculiar family, don't you? My mother commented at one point. The best family is the one we choose, Aisha replied. And I choose you too. 2 years passed. The shop had expanded to 5 cities. We had helped more than 200 women rebuild their lives. And I had become a recognized speaker on human rights and fighting human trafficking. During one of these lectures in New York, I was approached by an investigative journalist. Kayla, There are rumors that you have information about an international human trafficking case that involved important figures. Would you be willing to make that story public? I looked at her for a long moment, thinking about everything I had lived, about all the women we had helped, about all the ones who still needed help. No, I finally replied, because the most important story isn't about what happened to me. It's about what we're doing to prevent it from happening to others. But powerful people might be escaping punishment, and vulnerable people are being protected. Sometimes real justice doesn't come through public exposure, but through lasting systemic changes. Later that same week, I received a call from Sheikh Adam. It was the first time we had spoken directly since I left. Kayla, I saw your interview on television. I'm very proud of who you've become. Thank you. And you? How are you handling everything? Each day is an opportunity to do better than the day before. Aisha keeps me in line, and the work we're doing gives me a purpose I never had before. And your family? Your younger children? Ahmad came back from London and is helping with the administration of the rehabilitation center. Nasser is studying human rights at the university. They know about you now. How did they react? Better than I expected.
If this story kept you hooked until now, just imagine the next ones. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any. Give this one a like, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're listening from right now.
Ahmad said he always knew there was something strange about the deaths of the young women, and Nasser was impressed with your accomplishments. Maybe one day we can get to know each other properly. I would like that very much. All of us would. After I hung up the phone, I thought about how life can take completely unexpected turns. 3 years ago, I was just a seamstress in a small town, dreaming of giving my mother a better life. Today, I was a recognized activist, the leader of an organization that was making a real difference in the lives of hundreds of women, and part of a complex but loving international family. What are you thinking about? My mother asked, sitting next to me on the porch of our new house, about how sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best outcomes. Do you regret going? Never. Even knowing everything that would happen, I would make the same choice, because it brought me here. And if you could change anything, I thought for a moment, I would change the suffering of the other women. I would make it so that Catherine, Sarah, Elena, and all the others were still alive. But my own journey ... no. It made me who I am today. That night, as I reviewed reports from the shop and planned our next expansion, I received an email from Amina. She had become the main coordinator of the rehabilitation center and was preparing to open a branch in another country. Kayla, she wrote, I'll never forget that you taught me that our only weapon is sometimes our own identity. Today, I helped a 16-year-old girl who was sold by her own family. When she asked me how she would get through it, I said the same words you said to me. Don't let them crush who you are. I closed the laptop and looked out the window. Outside, I could see the lights of the shop where some employees were working the night shift, sewing not just fabrics, but rebuilding their own lives stitch by stitch. I was sold for $200,000 to a powerful sheikh, but I had a plan. Not the plan I thought I had when it all started, to become a model and get rich, but a much better plan, to discover who I really was, to use that discovery to protect other women, and to turn trauma into purpose. And in the end, I didn't just survive, I thrived. I didn't just free myself, I freed others. I didn't just find my family, I created a much larger chosen family, made up of courageous women who refused to let circumstances define their destinies. Sometimes, the best plans are the ones that emerge when we think we have no other options. Sometimes, our greatest strength appears when we are most vulnerable. And sometimes, being sold can be the first step to discovering that you are, in fact, priceless.